Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk arrived at the Polish-Belarusian border where they discussed defense and security. Russia launched over 100 attack and decoy drones at Ukraine overnight in what was its third large-scale attack this week.
Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in China on Sunday for what the Kremlin calls an unprecedented visit to its most important ally.
The Israeli military claimed on Sunday it killed a longtime spokesperson for Hamas's armed wing.
A convoy of some 20 ships carrying humanitarian aid with more than 300 crew members departed the port of Barcelona on Sunday for Gaza.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk arrived at the Polish-Belarusian border on Sunday, where they discussed defense and security. Von der Leyen reassured Tusk of Europe's full solidarity with Poland as a frontline state.
We have to keep this sense of urgency because we know that Putin has not changed and will not change. He is a predator. He can only be kept in check through strong deterrence. And therefore, we have to be coordinated, precise, and fast with the surge of our defense posture in the European Union and specifically in the frontline state.
The European Commission chief added that as the largest defense spender in Europe, Poland will be the biggest beneficiary from the Safe Loan Programme. Von der Leyen's visit to Poland is part of a broader tour of EU countries bordering Russia and Belarus, which also includes Estonia, Lithuania, Finland and Latvia. The tour also includes visits to Bulgaria and Romania. Russia launched 142 attack and decoy drones at Ukraine overnight in what was Moscow's third large-scale attack this week. Ukraine's Air Force said explosions were reported in Odessa, Kherson, Zaporizhia and Dnipro. In Odessa, at least one person was injured and tens of thousands of people were left without electricity due to damage to energy infrastructure. And at least 2 people were killed and several others were injured in the southern city of Kherson, local media reported. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that the large-scale attacks are a way through which Russia is demonstrating that without pressure, there will be no end to the war. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian leader reported, quote, heavy losses to Russian forces in Ukraine's Pokrovsk, where he says Moscow's army is concentrating its greatest efforts.
Lithuania has completed the installation of the so-called Dragon's Teeth on its border with Russia's Kaliningrad exclave. The Lithuanian Defense Ministry on Saturday described this as the latest step in a series of defense measures taken by the Baltic country to deter Russian aggression. The Baltic states is trying to limit the possibility of using unused roads to reduce the risk of a land invasion. Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia are members of NATO and border Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in China on Sunday to a rolled-out red carpet for a summit in the northern Chinese port city of Tianjin. Putin is among a dozen leaders attending the regional security summit, which comes at a crunch moment in talks over Ukraine. Analysts say Putin and Xi will seek to align their positions on the war amid U.S. efforts to end the fighting. Ahead of his arrival, the Russian leader praised relations between Moscow and Beijing, saying they have reached an unprecedentedly high level. Putin is expected to stay in China, his most important ally, for 4 days, in what is an unusually long visit for the Russian president. He will also be attending a massive Chinese military parade through Beijing to mark the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender at the end of World War II. The most recent meeting between Putin and Xi occurred in May this year at the Kremlin in Moscow, during Xi's state visit, which also involved participation in the 2025 Moscow Victory Day parade.
The Israeli military claimed on Sunday it killed a longtime spokesperson for Hamas's armed wing. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz identified the spokesperson as Abu Obeida, who reportedly was killed over the weekend. There was no immediate comment from Hamas on the claim. Obeida's last statement was issued on Friday when Israel declared Gaza a combat zone after launching its expanded offensive. The statement said militants would do their best to protect living hostages, but warned that they would be in areas of fighting. He also said the remains of dead hostages would, quote, disappear forever.
A maritime convoy of ships departed from Barcelona to the Gaza Strip on Sunday with humanitarian aid, activists and celebrities on board seeking to break the Israeli blockade of the Palestinian enclave. It comes after food experts warned earlier this month that 500,000 people across Gaza were facing catastrophic levels of hunger. The global submerged flotilla said they are carrying much-needed food, water and medicine and demanded safe passage in a statement. But it is unclear if Israel will allow their delivery of aid. The Spanish convoy is expected to be joined on the 4th of September in the middle of the Mediterranean by other expedition aid ships heading to Gaza. Among the crew is the Swedish activist Greta Thunberg. It is not the first time that Thunberg has attempted to reach Gaza waters this year. She and 11 other activists aboard a ship called the Madeleine were stopped by the Israeli military and deported in June.
Soaring prices and empty beaches. That's been the main talk this summer. But on a midweek August afternoon, this beach club along the Lazio coastline doesn't look empty. Figures mainly from industry groups show overall visitor numbers are down by as much as 30% compared to last summer. But how true is that picture? Antonello Chiappini, who runs this beach club in Ladispoli, confirms the drop, but says it's not new. Since the pandemic, he explains the way people take holidays has changed, especially when it comes to local tourism.
Abbiamo notato nel post-Covid un trend in cambiamento, nel senso che qui il turismo si è spostato molto sul fine settimana rispetto all'infrasettimanale. Questo è stato determinato da tanti fattori. Uno innanzitutto è il fatto che non si prende più in affitto un mese, 2 mesi come avveniva in passato l'appartamento alla Dispoli, anche perché gli appartamenti, il prezzo degli affitti, ecco, più che un caro degli abbonamenti c'è stato un innalzamento del costo degli affitti. Quello che abbiamo aumentato nel fine settimana non riesce a compensare le mancanze durante la settimana.
Other associations like Federbalneari seem to agree, though they argue it's not really about prices. The 20% rise in tariffs since 2012, they say, is modest when compared with post-Covid inflation.
I prezzi dal 2022 sono sempre gli stessi, abbiamo ombrellone e 2 lettini, il giornaliero a 25, abbiamo con un lettino 18 e il lettino sta a 8 euro. Quindi credo in linea con tutti gli altri stabilimenti.
Regular customers say they'll keep coming as long as tariffs stay the same.
In questo stabilimento i prezzi, diciamo, si sono più o meno mantenuti, o comunque in confronto agli altri sono moderati. Però so di altri lidi che comunque dove i prezzi appunto si sono alzati in maniera esponenziale.
In altri stabilimenti dove naturalmente i prezzi sono saliti, certamente dà fastidio.
Tariffs are not regulated and private concessions granted without time limits are blamed by some associations for keeping costs high, an issue still at the centre of a dispute between Rome and Brussels. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
"2025 is already a record year for forest fires in Europe, and fire season is far from over. While the continent has seen devastating seasons in the past, this year, surface area burned and the speed at which the fires spread is unprecedented. Leading the way were Italy and Romania, each of which recorded more than 450 fires. The countries that suffered the most damage were not necessarily those that declared the most fires. Cyprus, for example, reported 3 fires, but less damage. Since January 1st, 3% of Portugal, 2.3% of Cyprus and 0.8% of Spain have gone up in smoke.
And a lot of the fires that we've been monitoring and observing are occurring where the climate anomalies show that it's much drier than average and where it's warmer than average. And generally, this is a common feature when we're monitoring wildfire emissions, that they occur under these conditions, and particularly where there's hot, dry winds blowing, any ignition can flare up very rapidly to large scale and very intense wildfires.
More than 1 million hectares of land was burned through in the EU this year. That's more than 4 times as much as last year. In total, more than 1,800 forest fires were declared active, emitting more than 38 million tonnes of CO2.
We need a combination of different fire behavior factors. So this is weather, this is topography, this is vegetation, biomass, fuel. But the precondition for everything to happen is the weather. So the climate change scenarios provide the perfect envelope for all the other factors to work together for the perfect fire day or perfect firestorm.
Experts have sounded the alarm. Under these conditions, which will become increasingly common in the future, fires are getting out of control.
Our firefighting system comes to its limits, and the only thing we can do is preparing the landscape, making it more resilient, better prepared, so then the firefighters have a chance to work safely and efficient. But continuing like this and hoping that more firefighting resources will solve the problem we saw this year, this is clearly not the way forward.
So far, the exact number of deaths from the fires is unconfirmed. Smoke and disease can also claim lives long after the fires have been extinguished.